What if I just clickbaited you and this is a chaos video? No, it's not. I'm just joking. What's up, guys? It's Connor, and today we're talking about the more underappreciated characters in Warhammer, mainly the human ones. And I know what you're thinking. Connor, if his cane ring a bell? Goth's ghosts, perhaps? And to that I say, whatever, bro. I've read the books, or I'm reading the books at least. Can't talk to me, man. I'm a Warhammer fan. Of course, I haven't read the source material. No. Really good example, sure. But this is my video. And I have a lot of other characters that I think deserve the spotlight, the more baseline humans. Because listen, there's a reason Space Marines are the face of Warhammer. They sell. You don't have to overcomplicate it. You don't have to write a 5-page essay about why GW is biasing Space Marines. It's just an economic thing. Sometimes it sucks that means that other factions don't get the attention they deserve. But that's why I'm here. Because I'm doing what that multi-billion-dollar company won't do. I'm talking about it in my apartment, and I'm talking about the characters that deserve it. So let's get into that. First of all, one of the more favorite human characters for me is Euphrates Keeler. And yes, if you don't know who Euphrates Keeler is, she could be considered the first, Imperial Saint. And she's in the first 3 books of the Heresy, Horse Rising, False Gods, Galaxy in Flames. But really what appeals to me about her is her evolution as a character. We see her as a remembrancer. She's following Loken around and the Mournival, and really all is well, it's normal. But then she sees Samus, sort of possess Jubal or Khan or Jubal. His name is Jubal, and he was a Luna Wolf. And for the first time ever, Astartes attacked Astartes. Space Marine on Space Marine violence in 30K at this point was literally unheard of. And she saw Samus in true form and was in a pict and was horrified. And it mentally scarred her and changed her. And for the first time, she, in 30K, there was the Imperial truth. There are no gods, You follow this logic and everything. But Euphrates Keeler whittled out and had a statue of the Emperor, because the Latitio Divinitatis, or what would be later known as the Imperial Cult, was still sort of spreading around in 30K, but it was more like a fringe thing. But as the story goes on, Euphrates is traumatized and she can't really deal with everything. And then we keep going. And then she learns to, because she has faith in the Emperor, which is normal. Every soldier, Astartes, Primarch at this point in 30K has faith in the Emperor. Everyone does, because he's the peak of humanity. He's the man, not the god. The man who will usher in the golden age of human supremacy across the galaxy. But to her, the man is not a man, but a god proclaiming to be a man. And we see some of his divine intervention at this point when she's locked in a room with Carol Cinderman, or Cyril Cinderman. He's an orator, a speaker, and they're trapped with a demon, and she screams and holds up the eagle, and it says, the Emperor protects, and dispels the demon. And she talks with Loken, and she talks with, oh my god, now, what is his name? The world eater who's obviously was loyalist and was talking with Saul Tarvitz during Galaxy in Flames. No. Oh my god, what's his name? Nathaniel Garo. Yes. Ooh, I'm on fire. And it's just interesting how she just keeps evolving and goes from this normal side character to a character who almost is a totally different person, who is like a religious figure and is leading, a pulpit and a flock of true believers in the Emperor. And everyone she talks to, she subtly converts. Even Space Marines, even Loken is kind of having doubts and is wondering if he is more than a man. And every Space Marine she talks to, really, and it's very, very compelling and interesting. I really highly recommend you check some of that stuff out in the first 3 books if you haven't, or even just go back and read them. There's no harm in doing that. You might pick up something new that you haven't the first time. Second favorite character would probably have to be Septimus, actually, from the Night Lord's Omnibus. I know this isn't a Chaos video, though, because he is only really a slave. He may not believe in the Imperium as a whole, but he's obviously not really into Chaos either. He's aboard a Night Lord's, warband ship. Obviously, there was some warp phenomena going on in the ship. But Septimus and Octavia, by default as well, were really cool characters and really a breath of fresh air. They kind of knew what their role was. They acclimated to where they were, and it was, they had a love story going on, and it was nice. You don't often see romance in Warhammer, and that's funny for me as a world leader, because really the only thing I'm concerned with is brutal violence and then the cruel and unending, horror of the universe. But it's also nice to see two people healthily as much as you can aboard a chaos ship infested with the literal enemies of humanity. You have a relationship, and it's nice, and it's cool, and she's pregnant, and they have a happy doopy doopy family or whatever. Spoiler alert, I don't think it ends up like that. But they're nice. Septimus goes back and forth, and he has really one of the more unique relationships with Talos, who's a Night Lord, and basically he has this funny moment where he tells him and Nostraman to eat shit, and I thought that was hysterical, and he survives, but he gets beat up brutally. But Septimus and Octavia were really interesting as people, because you don't really get rational people in the setting, because that kind of defeats the whole purpose. A lot of the setting or problems could be solved by rational people, like that one time where they could have killed Slanesh, but they didn't because they wanted the Space Marine who was involved in this. It was a Death Watch Marine wanted to kill the Eldar he was with or something like that. Like, a lot of the stuff in Warhammer thrives only because everybody is so irrationally stupid and zealous. So it's nice to see level-headed characters like Octavia and Septimus, who are just like, yeah, we're in a really shit situation. We're going to do what we can to survive, but I also understand that as nice as everyone on the ship can be to me, they're only nice to me because, A, I'm important, because Septimus is super educated and knows Nostraman and knows how to pilot most of the ships there to some degree, and he fixes the armor. And Octavia's a navigator, so of course she's really useful, because if you don't have a navigator in the warp, no matter your allegiance, unless you're like a word bearer or something, you're kind of screwed, right? So it's just nice to see normal people in a setting where nobody's normal. So, I just think they also deserve to be up there. And then obviously number 3 would have to be Caiaphas Cain. I think he's really cool. I like characters who are like cowardly, even though I wouldn't describe him as cowardly. His imposter syndrome obviously makes him super appealing, and he's hysterical. But he's also a badass and a competent warrior, and I think people really overlook that because we're seeing it from his perspective, where everything is put into question and is biased because the dude has no how would I put this? He has no real consistent confidence. Dude is either his sniffing his own farts like they're made of gold, or the dude is literally the most critical person of himself of all time. And Jurgen could obviously he'll get an honorable mention. I think he's funny, but I'm not really my favorite. And finally, actually, a character some of you may have literally never heard of is Varnus from the Word Bearers Omnibus. I know, this isn't a Chaos video though, this is about normal humans. So Varnus, if you don't know, was on the planet of Tannacraig, and the Word Bearers have some interest in it because there's some Xenos technology, Necron, that could open and close warp portals or whatever, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, spoiler territory, but there might be a little bit of spoilers. It's not super important because I won't go over how it affects him, but he starts off as a soldier of the world. He's in the either the PDF or the Guard, and one way or another, fate, you can infer it's the Chaos Gods, or just, unfortunately, the Emperor in one way or another. He gets captured, and you get to see firsthand how a Chaos cultist is created, and you get a very in-depth look at the gods speaking, and you get to see a normal Imperial citizen, or at least as normal as you can get when you're in this sort of situation, devolve into a Chaos cultist, and how it sometimes is by force and other times by choice. And it's interesting to see a character go from an established persona and motivations and that get absolutely deconstructed to their most primal and, just, again, yeah, primal is the most appropriate word for this. Their most primal baseline level, personality and they're almost a completely different character, and then at the very last moment they have a brief moment of reflection and they look at what they've done, and then it's all over. It's just a completely different person, and they just can't accept it. It's beautiful and it's tragic, and it's one of those rare instances where you get to see corruption that's not primarily happening on a space marine. You know, the corrupted warp spawn are definitely more entertaining to watch, right? But when you see it with a human, it's also very interesting. He's just one of the cooler characters, I think, in that whole story, besides the sergeant and the tech priest. But I don't remember the sergeant's name, but he was a badass and he died a warrior's death. So shout out to him. And finally, if I have to think if there's any more baseline characters who I think are really, really cool, I would have to say Yarick would be up there. I think he's a badass. Think about it straightforward. There's no other dude on Earth or on Terra who can just get an orc boss claw and then hoist it upon himself and just make it move because he believes. He's the most orcishly human dude ever, and if you said that to his face, he'd probably kill you. But seeing him when I was reading the Prophet of the Wog and seeing him referenced and all the stuff he did to combat against, Thraka, really interesting stuff. And I think he sort of gets not like typecast, but really isolated into the one role of old man too angry to die. If you look into who he is and kind of even remotely understand why the hatred is there, you would kind of get why he's such an appealing character, not just because he's so effective against orcs. And any video of that, I would honestly recommend. Amber King has a really good video on Yarrick that I'd highly recommend if you kind of want to get a really in-depth overview of who he is as a character. And then maybe I would also recommend probably go get some books with Yarrick because he's really cool. And then finally, even though I don't know a lot about her, you could take a guess. She's a badass and she's affiliated with the World Eaters. I'll give you 3 tries. I'm going to assume you just used your 3 tries. It's, Lotara, Sarin or whatever, if I'm getting that right. Now, obviously, I don't know enough about her because I'm not going to talk about my ass and talk out of my ass and say things that I'm not familiar with her. Again, I'm doing the same thing I do all the time. I preach about it. Don't rely on YouTubers or Reddit for a good amount of lore because you're going to get a really either biased perspective or there's just going to be stuff missing because that's just how it is. There's a lot to cover, right? I'm going to go against my own advice and I'm going to say from all the excerpts and YouTubers I've watched, Lotara is just a badass. Having her with the World Eaters command her ship and talk up to both Angron and Karn, the most, violent people in the known universe at this rate, during the heresy and all this, and it's her ship, and she shoots an Astartes for, trying to call her bluff and everything. She's the ultimate badass, I think, with 40k. She is a character that I think you should admire, respect, and definitely get interested and read whatever she's involved in, because there's very few times you see a character so damn, sure of themselves confidence-wise, because it is her ship. That is her ship. Angron will acknowledge her as captain, Karn, and any other World Eater, because she is like them in that respect. A warrior, someone to be respected, someone who will die for what they believe in, because she has nothing else to live for but her ship and her leadership. Really awesome and really, really cool. So, yes, are there other characters who deserve more hype and recognition? Absolutely. So guess what? Drop them in the comments. You got some human characters who you think are badass or awesome or anything of the sort, drop them. I'll learn about them. I'll read about them. I'll look them up. I'll do it. I would love to learn more about the baseline level humans. I've been reading way too many Space Marine stuff, and quite frankly, I need a break from Space Marines in general. So, got any human stuff besides, I'm reading Kingmaker right now, but any human stuff, let me know. You got any favorites, let me know. And if you watched the whole video through, always appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I am out of here.